All right, so I'm now recording something that's a little bit off the cuff. We are in the middle of a pandemic right now. I'm actually recording these voiceovers in my spare bedroom at my apartment. Things are not awesome right now, and producing this podcast has become difficult. So we're going to take a little bit of a break from the regularly scheduled episodes until the pandemic is over. In the meantime, I've got some friends that are able to help out, and I've got some ideas for some short episodes that are about some musings and ideas about food. Right now, I really just want everybody to be safe, and I want us to get through this. This has been devastating on the service industry, and I'm legitimately concerned about the ramifications this is going to have for restaurant culture. Once the pandemic's over, go out, support things, have a drink. But for right now, stay safe. And a special thanks on this episode to Darian Price and Megan Rivas for coming over and recording this while I pound hard seltzer. From Rixie, this is Butter. I'm Nathan Rivas. The show about chefs and the impact food has had on their lives, their businesses, and the community. Today, I want to talk about Puerto Rican food. Puerto Rican food is American food, but I'll be the first to admit that my exposure to and knowledge of is severely lacking. My biggest exposure to Puerto Rican food is a humble yet larger-than-life food truck called Will's Place. Run by Will Negrón, his food is interesting yet comforting, which is really just an extension of himself. He is a beacon of hospitality, so I decided to sit down with him and learn more about the food, culture, and the life of this larger-than-life man.
My name is Will Negrón, and I am a military brat, born in North Carolina, but traveled the world with my parents. My mother and father is from Puerto Rico, and married for 23 years and have 3 kids, 22, 19, and 13. We specialize in Puerto Rican food. And, the big question is, what is Puerto Rican food? Because we have a lot of people coming to the truck and, oh, it's Spanish food. Mexican tacos, burritos? No, we're Caribbean islands. And so we have a strong influence from Africa, Spain, and the islands. So we have Creole food, because in Puerto Rico they call it criollo, which is Creole. And so we just use a lot of herbs and spices. Nice green, vibrant herbs and nothing spicy. We don't believe in doing spicy foods. Now, we make pique, which is a traditional hot sauce. It's a vinegar-based hot sauce in Puerto Rico. But we just believe in our bold flavors. We just want people to, to enjoy a good, flavorful meal without having to offer salt and pepper on the table.
What are the name of your businesses?
So it's Will's Place LLC. That's the food truck. That's the overall umbrella of our company. And then we have Hit the Spot Kitchen. And then in the works, we'll be business partnering up with Reclaim Video.
What is the WEPA that I see a lot on your posts?
Oh, WEPA? So WEPA is an expression. It's like saying right on, let's go, yeah. But it's the way you say it. You're supposed to say it with this nasally, like WEPA. And so you hear a lot of music artists say that in their songs. And so it's kind of equivalent to the Greek saying Opa. And so, but we're very proud of our WEPA though. So we have it on our license plate, WEPA 1. And then we even have a rice bowl called the WEPA rice bowl.
Okay.
And it's funny because a lot of Puerto Ricans that just come off the island, they see that and they get a kick out of it. Oh, look, a wepa rice ball.
That's a good way to identify yourselves too.
Yeah, yeah. And the cool thing about the word wepa too, because Puerto Ricans, we're very proud of who we are. So we could be driving down the road and we see the Puerto Rican flag, and we be like, "Wepa Boricua!" And Boricua is so before it was called Puerto Rico, it was like Isla de Borincans, which means brave and noble lords. But they were part of they were a tribe in the island of Puerto Rico. So whenever we see another Puerto Rican, we say, "Hey, Boricua," and we say "Wepa," And so I guess we could use it as a greeting as well. Some of us could be very obnoxious with it too, though.
Who can't be? Huepa is a statement of celebration in Puerto Rican culture. Will celebrates every day he cooks, and honestly, this sums him up pretty well. What was your childhood like, and what was your relationship like with food in your childhood?
Well, if you look at me, I'm a big boy, so food was a big part of my life. Just growing up, my mother and father they both cooked. We always had, for the most part, always had a home cooked meal. But once October, like towards the end of October hits, because now you're entering into the holiday season of Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. Every weekend, we were either at somebody's house or somebody was at our house, and it was just tons of cooking, music playing, and so this bunch of traditional foods of Puerto Rico. You're talking about pernil, which is slow roasted pork, arroz con gandules, which is Spanish rice with pigeon peas, and pigeon peas is it's kind of reminiscent to like a lentil, but it's something that's very prominent in the Caribbean islands. And so just growing up, food every weekend. I'm talking about massive, massive place and people just eating and drinking and partying and dancing, just having a good time. And it was easy for them to leave like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
You
So
know.
you guys had big celebratory dinners pretty often.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Now, was there any event that caused that, or was that just kind of the lifestyle that?
It's just a lifestyle of Puerto Rico. What was cool was if you was to ever look at Puerto Rico in a geographical map of the night at nighttime, right? So you have all these islands in the Caribbean. On the Caribbean, Puerto Rico is one of the smaller ones, but it was the brightest one. It's kind of like the North Star. You have all these stars, but the North Star is the brightest one. So that was kind of like Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands. You have this really bright island, and it's because we love to celebrate. It doesn't matter. We'll find an excuse to, if somebody hasn't farted for 2 weeks and they had their first fart, they're gonna celebrate. It's just, I know it's a little ridiculous, but that's the way we are. And there's always food, music, and drinking and dancing. And Puerto Rican places with parties is one of those places where I guarantee you, if you go to a Puerto Rican party, you cannot be a wallflower because there's just something about the music, and you can see the people enjoying themselves, laughing, and the food. Your hips is gonna start moving, swaying side to side, and you can start dancing. And the next thing you know, you have a chica grab you by your arm and start swinging you around the dance floor. But that's part of our culture. That's we have fun. So it's just one of those things. That's how I grew up. Now, we don't do as much dancing now in the truck, but our food part, that's our purpose of the food. We want to introduce this region of people, Fredericksburg. What exactly is Puerto Rican food? We want to educate. And what's cool about Puerto Rican food too, and what we're learning on this journey, is how versatile it is, right? And so we do a lot of play on foods. And even some of the traditional stuff, the way it's cooked or the way it's prepped and presented, we do it a little different.
Will respects the traditions of Puerto Rican food, but he doesn't shy away from innovation, whether that is due to kitchen limitations or just a fresh take altogether. He prides himself on these clever innovations, and they're a reason to keep coming back to his food truck.
For example, you have bacalaitos, which are deep fried codfish fritters. And so when you go to Puerto Rico and you order a bacalaito, it's usually a flat disc. I say good, maybe 6, 7 inches, right? Very thin. But we don't have that luxury in the truck because we don't have a cast iron skillet. We have a deep fryers. So we make little fritters that look like little golf balls, So we present that differently. So it's funny seeing some of the Puerto Ricans that are fresh off the island. They look and they have a weird look at first, but once they get that taste, they get it. It's like, oh, the process is still the same, just the presentation is different. And then even some of the empanadas, like, some of our traditional empanadas, the picadillo, which is one of the more traditional ones, traditionally is beef, but we use ground turkey instead. And so a lot of Puerto Ricans that see turkey, oh, why is it turkey not beef? I try to explain to them the process is the same. Everything's cooking the same. It's kind of like Cajun food, Louisiana style food. You go to Louisiana, you can't mess with tradition. You have to go to Houston, Texas, to get the new flavors of Louisiana. And so, not only am I trying to show this region of people, Virginia, about Puerto Rican food, but I'm trying to show Puerto Ricans, the old traditional Puerto Ricans, that our food is so versatile. It doesn't have to be, yes, we have our tradition, but let's create new traditions. Let's create new ways on presenting some of the foods. Like even the sweet and spicy empanada, traditionally is guava with queso blanco, or just guava. We put habanero jack cheese because we love the contrast of sweet and spicy together. It's a great contrast. You see it in Asian foods, you see it in Italian foods. Hell, you even see it in American foods now. So why not? If it tastes good, and here's the bottom line, we like it. We only gonna serve food that we like. And if you don't like it, or if your mind is not open to it, I'm sorry. You could leave and go to another business.
Will refuses to shortchange customers on the Puerto Rican experience. He's steadfast in this conviction.
And and the cool thing is, you liked it, you went for it, you had it in your gut, and dude, that's what the food industry should be like. You'll get lost, or it's like a slow suicide, for the lack of better words, if you're cooking for the people and not cooking for yourself. Because if you try to cook for the people, there's so many taste buds, there's so much ignorance when it comes to food that people just don't know. You're putting out these creative, inventive ways on what else can go on the pizza, because sky's the limit what you could put on pizza. Because pizza's on the dough, it's bread.
Yeah, it's bread.
And so you could put pretty much anything between two slices of bread, and for the most part, it will be good. For the most part. But it's how you layer it, how you put it together, and how you present it, just like you're doing your pizza. And so we're doing the same thing with our food. But we also want to add, we do keep some things traditional, because tradition is important. And just because you create a new way to present it, you're not disrespecting the old. We're just showing that it could all come together. Hell, like this past Saturday, we call it the German empanada, and the only reason why I put the German, I thought of the movie Snatch when Jason Strahan was making fun of his friend. Oh, the Germans. So we did a bratwurst, local bratwurst and sauerkraut empanada, and we did a curry ketchup dip to go with it. Now people's like, that's not Puerto Rican. I was like, you're right. I am though. This is my truck, and we're not limited on what we have to offer. You're just showing you that you could put any region between this empanada shell and fry it up, and it's going to be good. And so, we just trying to, just express what we love to do, show people some of the traditional things of Puerto Rico, the flavor profile. The flavor profile is what's important for our food. The presentation, okay, we come out of our presentation, but the flavor profile is the same. And what we're trying to do also with the Puerto Rican food is it's unfortunate that you have a lot of Puerto Rican restaurants nowadays that are shortcutting how to cook the food, right? And one thing my mother always told me, if I want to cook food, Puerto Rican food for others, I better cook it like I cook it at home. And that is key. And unfortunately, so many people do not. They'll cook it to make money or cut expenses. They're trying to make as much money off of one pot of rice as possible. And they'll shortcut it. That's like one person came to the truck and it's like, what do you have in your rice? Do you have peppers in your rice? I said, yeah, we have green peppers, red peppers, onions, Spanish olives. And he's like, well, my wife is allergic to peppers. I was like, well, I'm sorry. It's cooked in. He said, well, this other Puerto Rican restaurant don't do that. Well, I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry that you got shortened for your quality of food, because traditionally, this is how it's supposed to be. Like I said, again, my mother and father, both of them were great cooks. My mother grew up more in the metropolitan area, so it was cool to see the different styles of cooking, because my father grew up in the barrio. And
where's the barrio?
So he grew up in Toabaja. And so when you mention barrio, it's more of like a lower income area.
Okay. So like
the slums.
Rural? Oh, slums.
The slums.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like leftover. It's like a leftover section for people to live in. Um, and so he didn't grow. They grew up poor. It was like he had 13 brothers and sisters living in the house, probably the size of the living room we just walked through. You know, and so their style of cooking was how much can we make? How much can we stretch out this bit of food? What can we create with this little bit of food? It was great, and that's one thing Sean Brock was talking about. That same creation, because he grew up in the farm, not a lot of money, so they had to create food from what they were growing on their own land. And the crazy thing about Puerto Rican food is you have to make the rice and pork like their abuela's grandmother. And you'll hear, oh my gosh, this is almost like my abuela. When you hear that, you're in. And so, but again, everybody's different on how the processing or the ingredients. But just introduce again back, just offering what Puerto Rico has to offer. Hell, we're part of the states. We're a territory. Why not embrace our brotherhood and sisterhood together? And that was another thing growing up, because what food did growing up was brought people together. And so, all in a nutshell, that's I grew up with that. My parents were military, and we traveled a lot. We went to Germany, and when I lived in Germany, we traveled to Yugoslavia. They no longer exist. Italy, France, all these different regions, all these different flavors. And these are things that I just remember as a child. When we lived in Germany, we lived in Texas, when we lived in Georgia. And I ate at so many different people's houses. When I lived in Georgia, I experienced fish and grits for the first time. That was like the cookout thing. I went to the country out in Aiken. They got invited to a cookout. I'm already expecting like ribs and hamburgers. No, they had fish and grits. And I had never had grits before. So I got introduced to that. And I never had deep fried fish before. I've had bacalaitos, which is totally different, but I had their food. And dude, it was great. Who would have thought fish and grits went together?
So you had parents that cooked. When you left the nest, what was your relationship with food like?
Man,
Or how did you leave the nest?
all right, so the way I left the nest the first time, it wasn't on good terms. I just started dating my wife in Augusta, Georgia. I met her in Augusta, Georgia. That's where I was at. And then so I got kicked out of the house because my mom found a bag of weed in my room. She kicked me out. So the next day I was in Charlottesville, Virginia. And it was my first time being in the Virginia area, so I didn't know what Virginia had to offer.
You went directly from Georgia to Virginia. And have you been here since?
Well, I moved back to Georgia like 9 months later. So I lived with my wife for 9 months in the dorm at UVA.
Oh, wow.
Man, talk about tight quarters. So when I was up here, I got introduced to Charlottesville. But this is back in 98. So it's not like the Charlottesville you see today where they have all these foodie places. Kind of pisses me off a little bit that none of those places were there when I was there. We had a wood grill buffet. Ooh.
Charlottesville has more restaurants per capita than New York City.
I know. So the food culture was almost non-existent. This is one chain restaurants was like my best friend. Chick-fil-A, Domino's, Taco Bell. This is when Taco Bell used to be good. But it's funny. So when I was living in Charlottesville the first time, my parents had real good friends in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So they were going up for Christmas. So I was like, all right, you know what? I haven't seen my folks since I got kicked out. I left on bad terms. Let's go. They're in North Carolina. We don't have to drive to Augusta, Georgia. And plus, I missed the food. I wanted some rice. I wanted some chicken. I wanted some beans. The way my parents made it. So, dude, I was working at Foot Locker at the time. And so, Foot Locker has the striped shirts. We left Charlottesville. It was probably, I want to say 7, 8 o'clock at night. No, it was Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Eve, so the mall closed at 6. So we was on the road by 7 o'clock. Dude, we had a 94 Honda Civic. I was crushing it. I was going 115. Hit Nash County, North Carolina. I get pulled over, and here I am. My wife is black, and so I get pulled over by this cop. He sees us. He arrested me. I was on my way for some food. See my parents, I get arrested. And the irony was I had a striped shirt on, so I already had the stripes on when I got thrown in jail. I moved back to Georgia. I actually got my first gig in the food industry when I moved back. I was working in the mall. I worked at Great American Cookie Company. I was baking cookies. And then I picked up a second job. Great Steak and Potatoes was right next door. So I was working at Great Steak and Potatoes in the evening. So I was making steak subs and all that. So when I moved to Virginia, I lost contact with the food. But then moved back to Georgia, worked at Great Steak and Potatoes, started learning how to cook. Really enjoyed it too. And so, but not knowing, I didn't know there was going to be a future in the food industry for me later on, you know? And so, because I grew up in a household that not only cooked, but they emphasized cook. You have to work for a living. You have to work for what you want. I found out she got pregnant. I found out she was pregnant, moved back to Virginia. When I moved back to Virginia, I was in it for the long haul. So I knew I had to learn how to cook.
A nexus of life events brought forth the realization that it was time to cook, and cook seriously, to bring his parents' cooking into his growing family.
Dude, I decided I wanted to cook for my wife's aunt out in Lexington. So I said, let's go get the ingredients. I'm gonna make some fried chicken the way we make it. It came out so salty. I'm telling you, it absorbed all the saliva out of your mouth. You puckered up so bad. It was the worst. That was my first like go at trying to cook. I was like, all right. The rice, Spanish rice, forget about it. I try to imitate my mom's rice. It took me, I kid you not, like a good 2 or 3 months nonstop making rice to finally get it cooked. Not even good yet, just cooked.
So this is back in what, 98, 99?
This is like, yes. I said like 99 because we had just moved to Fredericksburg from Charlottesville. So yeah, 99. Okay. Because Sierra was born in 97. That's my oldest. And so yeah, 99. And I couldn't wait to go down because by this time my parents had moved to Florida. And I wasn't waiting to go once a year to eat Puerto Rican food. So I had to learn. And so I would just call my mom, like, hey, what are the ingredients, yada, yada, yada. And so little by little. And then, I worked in some food places here in Fredericksburg. I worked at Regina's Pasta Factory, learned how to cook some pasta and whatnot. And I was working at Blackstone too. Shortly after Tanner and I met, by this time I knew I wanted to cook.
So Tanner, Will mentions that this is the time that you guys met. What year was this?
I would need to check on this specifically, but I think it was like 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. Blackstone Coffee, which I think still exists on campus, was this new, like, sort of hip coffee shop in Fredericksburg that all the college students went to and worked at.
What do you remember about working with Will and kind of like his role at Blackstone and like, his mannerisms? What do you remember about that?
Yeah, so I mean, just like any job that I don't know if it's just me, probably isn't, but that I would start, I was super nervous and I was like, what if I'm awful? What if I'm a terrible, barista? And he was kind of just like this, almost a manager type. I don't think he officially had the role, but he was just this veteran at this coffee shop. And he was really specific about, the way he would pull espresso shots and the drinks that he made. He wasn't heavy-handed in his direction at all, but definitely a low-key master of the trade, if you will. So he's really a good mentor for me there. Lo and behold, we figured this out probably like 5 or 6 months later. We had the same academic advisor that helped direct our theses. So that was a really cool connection that we had.
Will's desire to cook brought him to start looking at a career in the culinary arts, bringing his passion and love for Puerto Rican cooking to the public.
You know how we always say we want to do something? Oh man, I would love to do that. But we just keep on talking to ourselves. Oh, we want to do that. I love to. Something changed. I was like, you know what? Let me stop saying I want to. I said, I'm going to. And so I finally put my foot, like everything I wanted to try to cook, I finally had enough and I just did it. I wanted to go buy the ingredients. If I messed up, I messed up. It was just one of those things. 'Cause I don't have a formal education for culinary, and didn't really get taught. I wasn't with my mom. I took that for granted when I was living with them. They cooked and I ate. I wasn't in the kitchen when she was cooking. I was playing doing whatever boys do at that time, in the 80s and 90s. Had to fend for myself and had to feed my wife and she was just a baby then. She was, enjoying what my wife had to offer, her fruits. But when she got older, though, I had to cook. And so I just put my foot down and I finally did. I was like, I'm going to do it. And just got better and better and better. And even the cutting techniques. Dude, you know how many times I cut my hands in the beginning? Because I didn't know about curling up your fingers. I didn't know none of that stuff.
That's one thing I do want to ask you about. So, like, you taught yourself how to cook late 90s, early 2000s, where when I decided that I wanted to cook, there was literally a boundless amount of information. Like, if I wanted to be a cook, the information was at my fingertips. It was on YouTube. It was
Right.
on my fucking PS4. Like,
Right.
I sat down on the couch and taught myself how to cook. You did not have that luxury.
No.
So
It
what
was
was that experience like where you taught yourself how to cook? Where, like, I watched videos of how the dish is supposed to be cooked and how it's supposed to look at the end. So I had a clear guide on that. You didn't.
Well, let me tell you here, young man. There was a thing called books back in the day. And it's books. Actually, just a lot of cookbooks. TV, PBS, people forget that PBS was one of the originators of having chefs on TV.
Okay, so
Right.
you did have some access to food programming.
I did, but we didn't have DVR. We didn't have where you could record and rewind. You just had to watch it and try to remember it.
Right, this is late 90s, early 2000s. This is Emerald time.
Yeah, exactly. And then, just watch them and just, like, I bought Emerald's book,
It was my first book I ever
Was
got.
it?
It was There's a Chef in My Soup, the kids' cookbook for
Yeah.
Emerald Lagasse.
And just reading them and, and trial and error. Because the one thing I do remember with my parents was I knew the basic ingredients. Now, how to put them together, how to marry them together, I didn't know. But I knew that what ingredients were supposed to go. How much, and there's a funny saying in Puerto Rico, when it comes to season, we don't have measurements. Even to today with the restaurant, dude, I don't have. That's probably one of my biggest struggles on having an employee. Teaching them we don't have measurements. So they say in Puerto Rico, you continue to put seasoning to your grandmother's spirit tells you to stop. And so because we just know when to stop.
How much salt do I put in? Until it fucking tastes good.
Exactly. And we have to taste your food. Because look, if you're a chef and you don't taste your food, there's something wrong with you. Because you don't know what you're putting out. And even when you watch these, these shows like Gordon Ramsay and Robert Irvine, taste your food. And so these are little things that I've always learned growing up. And I used to watch my parents, like when they do the rice, one thing I used to see them do is they'll get the spoon and get the caldo is the broth part before all the liquid evaporates when you're cooking rice. So when you first put that water in, it's a little bit above the rice, right? But with all this, because when it comes to rice in Puerto Rico, there's a big focus on that rice. Because if you think about other cultures, rice is kind of like a side thing. But not with us, we put a lot of focus into our rice. So you taste the caldo, the broth part. And that's how we did it. That's how we learned. And so I remember seeing them do that. And I know what my taste buds liked. And again, we cook for ourselves. I'm only going to cook what I like. And if you don't like what I cook, again, like I said, I don't have no problem in somebody leaving and not coming back. Because there's plenty of fish in the water. One person's not going to hurt me. I'm not going to lose no sleep over one person. But when I was at Mary Washington, because technology was evolving by then, you had YouTube, you had, I won't say it too loud, but dude, I love Pinterest. Okay, Pinterest has my heart, man. The kitchen's my playground, and what I love about being in the kitchen, I am not scared to change something. I'm not scared to substitute something with something else. So when I go on Pinterest, I'm looking for the basic formula. Why reinvent the wheel? So I'm gonna look for the basic instrument, the basic foundation, but then I'm like, you know what? I think this might be better versus this. So I'll change it up. And the cool thing about cooking, if you change 3 or more ingredients, it becomes yours, And Again, because everything's been done already. But like I was talking about earlier, the presentation, presented it differently. But YouTube became a big friend of mine later on. That's where I learned how to. That's where I learned how to knife, how to use the knife techniques properly. Even how to baste a turkey, anything. I wasn't hesitant to look on YouTube and look it up. I wasn't scared. I wasn't ashamed to, because if you're ashamed to, you're in the wrong business.
I always joke. So I've had people come up to me and, where'd you go to culinary school? And I'm like, the University of YouTube. And they're
Right.
like, man, but like YouTube just released a thing where it shows how much time you spend a week on YouTube. I really wish they hadn't done that.
So I'm gonna say we because my wife plays a big part of this. She's my muse. She's my creativity, and she helps me out a lot. She's thick and thin, bringing all these things together. Oh, and learning, just learn. And like I have this young man working with me now, young dude, and I tell him, I say, don't be scared to make mistakes. Taste your food, cut your hands. I'm not gonna get on to not literally, but I'm not gonna get on to you. I want you to learn and taste your food. Love what you want to do, and then just teaching them the traditions of our food, because he's cooking what we're offering. But I tell him, while you're cooking it, think about what you could change to add it to make it yours. Think about where you're from. I want you to research where your grandmother and your grandfather's from, and what did they eat when they were growing up. What was their food, and how do you incorporate it to what you're learning now?
You're a lot nicer boss than I am. I'm like, stop making a fucking mess.
Oh, hey, so you watch Chef Show. You know how Roy Choi, you could tell he gets quiet, and then you see him like.
But he doesn't yell.
He doesn't yell. He doesn't. But you could tell he's getting very OCD because he's putting all the containers back in the sink and cleaning everything as he goes. I can see it. Or he'll just move them to the side and he'll take over. That's kind of like what I do. But at the same time, I had to stop myself from that, because how would the next generation learn? We have to teach them. I'm gonna change the subject just for a hot second. I told my wife 5 years with this business, so we're in year number 4 all together. We start Will's Place. Matter of fact, I was working at Paul's Bakery.
Did you see any like leadership or aspirations to be in the food business, or did he talk to you about moving to Paul's?
Yeah, so maybe 7 or 8 months into working with him, he had been offered this pretty big job at Paul's Bakery, which anyone from Fredericksburg knows the name. That is the sort of the quintessential family-run bakery that everyone goes to. So this seemed like a pretty big gig for him. Seemed like this was like sort of his level up. And I didn't really know that he cooked and or baked, but that was obviously going to be part of this next gig. So I think that offered some insight as to where he wanted to go next.
I was working at Paul's Bakery. I left Blackstone because the owner of Paul's had been trying to get me to come there for a while, right? But the money was a factor. I was like, I was committing loyal to Don because I wanted Don to help. I was trying to help grow his business. He just wasn't. He was old and he was comfortable. But anyway, I love him for that though. So I went to Paul's Bakery and I lasted. Now, Mike offered me great money. He pulled me out of where I was at. But everything happens for a reason. 6 months later, he let me go because I was too nice. And what's crazy is that his father had this place for 40 years, and that's because of his charity and his niceness. And so, but you know what? I didn't hold it against him because to this day, this individual still calls me and wants to run ideas through me. But I told him, I was like, you know what? You don't have to apologize. It's cool. I said, because I looked right, I was like, God just allowed you to do this because he has something else lined up for me. So you don't have to apologize. You're okay. I'm cool about it. I was actually like joyous inside. The next day, Maria went to the courthouse and we filed for Will's Place LLC. That's when it began. So we started catering for a whole year.
So you said this is year 4 of your business. So you catered for a year and then you got the food truck.
Yep, because we just hit our 3rd year anniversary with the truck this past August.
Oh, wow. So you were only a couple months behind me on truck stuff.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
So it started 4 years ago. And dude, like we were hustling. So I got connected with Fred Exchange, who is this entrepreneur ecosystem group in Fredericksburg that's trying to create this entrepreneur ecosystem. And I bought into it. And I'm not saying that in the past tense. I'm buying into it because I believe what they said. There was something in my gut. There's something special about Fredericksburg and offering food and what we have to offer. And there was this waterfall of Puerto Ricans coming into Fredericksburg out of nowhere. And to come to find out, Dahlgren, there's a big population of Puerto Ricans in Dahlgren because they have a contract with the University of Puerto Rico. And so, because, Puerto Rico is a territory. We're legal. As much as people, want to say we're the opposite. We're legal, okay? We're American citizens here, okay?
Will taps into a side of Puerto Rican culture that nobody really pays attention to, and his focus on his food brings many from the Spotsylvania area that felt that Puerto Rican culture was underappreciated.
So we started hustling and started meeting people, and I utilized the resources that I had gained to that moment. And dude, he was doing caterers for like 15, 20 people, and then he had Thumbtack, which was the app where you put in the bid for. If you're a carpenter, you could put in a bid for carpentry. If you're a whatever, so they have a section for cooks. So we put in for bids. And what's funny, our second bid, this was our 4th year doing her Halloween party.
Wow.
But it was a stepping stone. And dude, what's crazy, that first year, we didn't do no Puerto Rican food. None.
Really? What did you do?
So we did Americanized Italian food. Dude, we did an Asian infused taco bar for a corporate luncheon. And so we did a little bulgogi, a little white rice, a little Asian slaw. Pinterest, I love it. And so Pinterest, I'll give you guys a shout out, okay? But
You'd be a millionaire if you'd done sushi tacos that day.
Right.
If you'd done sushi tacos, like we wouldn't be able to get a hold of you.
Hey, you never know, man.
See?
There might be some other concepts out there,
Right.
Once I knew I was going to get into the entrepreneurial world, I had to change my mindset. I had to get rid of a lot of my paradigms, a lot of my bad habits, right? So even my morning breakfast, and I'm not talking about physical breakfast, I'm talking about mental breakfast. I'm listening to Les Brown, Bob Proctor, Zig Ziglar. So all these, because they're feeding their mind, and I had to change how I thought. And dude, it's been a hell of a journey. It's been fun, and we're growing. But it all started out with the catering. Kept it simple. We bought the truck with a negative balance in the account. You know what I'm saying? And look at us now.
Right. Persistence is 90% of that.
Right. We were doing the catering for a year, but I told myself, our year anniversary, we will have a truck. And dude, I say a few weeks after our year anniversary, we got the truck. And what's crazy about the truck is there was this guy named Forrest. He used to clean the windows at Blackstone, right? And so he knew I wanted to get into the food truck business. So now mind, this is a year before. This is when I was still at Blackstone. He had said, hey, there's this lady selling her food truck. You mind if I give her your number? I said, okay. So she called me up. We talked a couple of times, but I'm the worst in returning phone calls. So I never followed back up. So I left Blackstone, went to Paul's, got fired from Paul's, started at Will's Place LLC. But I had to do something to make money to maintain my family. So I was driving school buses. So while I was doing that, Jonathan Painter, Jonathan Painter, UFO food truck. He had told me there's a food truck on Levels Road that's for sale.
You helped them out for a period of time, didn't you?
I did. I worked on his truck. So he's part of my story too. I worked on his truck because he knew I wanted to start my own truck. So he let me work with him on his truck so I could learn the ins and outs of being on the truck.
See, I did that with Sobo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah. So this other guy I drove buses with was like, hey, there's this food truck for sale. But he took a picture of it and sent it to me. I was like, let's go check it out. So we're going to go check it out. Talk to the lady. And so what it was, her and her husband on the truck.
Was this the same truck that you talked to before?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I didn't know that till later.
Okay.
She was an elderly lady. Her and her husband ran the truck. He had passed away, and it became too much for her, right? And so we're talking. I said, what are you asking for? So she gave me a price. I'm like, okay. And so, trying to find who was going to invest me or whatever. So I found this dude that he was willing to invest. I kind of brought the price down a little bit from her, but I was like, I kept telling my wife, I'm going to get it at this price. She's like, why you keep on saying that? You getting it? I say, no. I said, I am standing on the agreement that we're going to get it for this price. So, dude, we're scrambling. So this dude, he's like, all right, write me out a contract. Let's see what it says. So Maria's aunt is a lawyer, so she looked over all the paperwork, and then gave it to him. So come to find out, he wanted a long-term, long-term partnership. And I was like, no, this is short-term. As soon as I pay this off, we're done. I don't want no long-term. I'm not going to give you proceeds for me busting my tail and offering what we making. And so I call my mom, I was like, man, she's like, no, don't. I was like, well, if you invest, I put it on her. I said, well, if you invest, we wouldn't be going through all this. So the next day she cut the check. And we got it for the price that I stood on. So we paid $8,000 less for the truck.
Wow.
And dude, it was on like Donkey Kong. It started. So we bought the truck in June. Mid-August, we had our first private event because we weren't health permitted yet. That's one thing I love about breweries. They don't bring out health inspectors too often. But anyway, we're permitted now, Virginia. We're legit now. But that was our first gig. And then in September, we had our first official pop-up. And dude, what's funny is now there's a Missions barbecue where all the food trucks, when they had their first initial pop-up right there in front of Gabe's on Route 3.
Was that the spot?
Well, that's where just about all the trucks that were new, Cuban Cravings, Want More Taco, they will park right there in their first initial pop-up. But now they can't because it's a Missions barbecue right there.
Oh.
Freaking corporates, not shucking.
One of the issues while running a mobile food business is that even if you find a good place to park, you can be run off by landlords or that area could be taken over by a larger chain.
So we had our first pop, and dude, it's been nonstop since then. And what's so great and what's so cool about the story of owning the food business is how you see the evolution of your business. If you stay persistent, like you said earlier, and you're willing to learn, you stayed humble, and you take constructive criticism, and don't be fearful of making mistakes. Dude, we've seen it evolve. Now we just hit a 3-year anniversary, and so in that process, it was like we need a commissary kitchen because there was a local church that had a licensed kitchen that let us use their kitchen, and so dude, we pretty much took over the whole. They had a double door fridge. We probably took up like 80% of that fridge. But when they had a big event, we had to take everything out. It was a pain, man. When people tell me, oh, I want to own a food truck, I look at them and say, do you really want to own a food truck? It's a lot of freaking work. It's more work than owning a restaurant. Just like, how so? I say, you and I are talking, me serving you, this is the easy part. But you don't see the before and after. Especially the after. You cooking all damn day, and you gotta come at the end and unload your truck and clean, and you're tired, your feet is aching, corns are popping out of your toes, man. But they don't see that. They just see the glory of serving and making money. So I knew about this spot when I was at Blackstone because Kelly from Mason-Dixon Mason-Dixon started out where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. And when she left, Blackstone Coffee was looking at that location to put a roaster in. So I already knew what the lease was. So knowing that information, I was like, okay, I know how much the lease is. So I got with Kelly from Mason-Dixon. Dude, she was great. Sat down, asked her some basic questions about the spot. Barbecue place moved in there. And so when we finally were in position to go in there, I had just found out this barbecue place had opened up a second location in Stafford, a bigger location, because their thing is they wanted to do music and alcohol. So I went up to her and was like, look, I know you have this spot, you have the other one. Do you want to pay lease on both of them or do you want to pay a lease on one? She's like, well, I just want one. I don't want to stay here. Because she had another year on her lease. I said, one thing about the state of Virginia I love, you could do a takeover lease. You could take over somebody's lease in the state of Virginia. So I was like, how about I take over your lease? You just go to your Stafford location and, be hunky-dory over there. She was like, okay. We just hit a year this past June. So our 2nd year anniversary, we got the spot. And going back to speaking what you want to happen, because one thing you learn from Les Brown and Bob Proctor and all them is the more you speak it out, it becomes part of your self-conscious. that it'll actually live out itself. You know what I'm saying? And so, again, we're going to have that spot. We're going to have that spot. We're going to have a spot at our 2nd-year anniversary. And shortly after the 2nd-year anniversary, we got the spot. A little after a year. Now, granted, we only do breakfast and lunch Tuesday through Friday. We was doing Monday through Fridays, but now Mondays are slow. We cut Mondays off. It's an admin day. And then we just found out somebody approached us about the opportunity. Is they're getting ready to open up a barcade in Fredericksburg, right? And what is a barcade? It's an 80s themed arcade hall that serves beer. So a middle-aged person like myself could truly appreciate it, you know? So he was asking about our empanadas, buying them wholesale. They didn't put a look. I was like, how about this? How about you just give us the exclusivity on the food? You don't have to worry about the food. Let us take care of that headache for you. And what helped is we presented some cool creative ideas what to do, right? And so here we are. They made the announcement on October 30th, and we had partnered up with Reclaim Videos, and that is our third venture. We are the exclusive food provider. They opened up. The target is the end of March, beginning of April. And dude, that's this. We're not even scratching the surface yet. And this is what I'm hoping for you too, Nathan, because and that's why I was enjoying your conversation earlier, and just hearing what you want to do, and just keep on saying it to yourself, dude. That's the great thing about the food business, man. Is so many fail because they're so limited in their thought process. And look, if I'm talking too much, please stop me by all means. But this is just something I'm so passionate about. Don't be limited. Whoever hears this, don't be limited in your thought process. And whatever you do, think outside the box. You know what? Erase the damn box and just think. Think clearly. No, like an ocean, no depths. No depths. Just think. Just do it. And after you thought about it, just do it. Because if you fall, one thing Les Brown says, and I love, he said, if you fall and you fall on your back, you're still looking up. This is just the beginning for us. And Nathan, I encourage you to continue to think big too, man. Continue to grow like you want, you're going to. I'm going to rephrase it. You're going to. Not trying to, you're going to. Will's Place will be the umbrella. But Hit the Spot Kitchen might be the trendy name to branch out. Now, I won't do a franchise. Me personally, I don't like the idea of franchise because somebody buys your business, that's your name. The other thing I didn't mention a lot of, but it's the heart of it, is talk about what's around us. It's our community. What can we create in our community with our food? We talked about food creating a gathering. And dude, what's so better than a gathering in your community? What can you help create in your community? And people got to eat. So what better way to reach out is by feeding them? Not only feeding their bellies, feeding their souls. And that's how you got to look at it when you're feeding people in the food industry. I don't know about the recording and podcasting industry. I don't know. I don't know about tech, or I don't know about window washing. But when it comes to food, there's just something special and unique about the food industry. And dude, one of the biggest compliments when you're catering is silence. When you hear that silence, because when you hear silence, that means they're eating. They're not taking if they're doing a whole lot of talking, that means your food's not good. Well, except for a brewery, because they're so drunk, they're going to be talking anyway. But all these little components, just observe, and we're going to continue to grow.
Like I had said earlier in my intro, Puerto Rican food is not something that I've been familiar with. But when you have somebody like Will Negrón being a representative for such a strong culture, I don't think you could nominate somebody better. And I'm glad that he was able to bring this to this area. Butter is a production of Rixie. Produced, edited, and mixed by myself, Tanner, and Mason Carlton. Special thanks to my parents for being supportive of me through this whole process. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review and rate the show. It really helps out.